There's no question that family engagement is valuable. I think we've covered that. I know that you're seeing that in your daily work. So as we go into the work and as we continue our school year, right, we know that family engagement is really about connecting with the people. And as we're connecting with people and as we're building dynamic relationships, we want to make sure that we're also informing our work and adopting a culture and a model of engagement that is trauma informed, because that's what's really going to sustain those transformative relationships. So I want you to remember that the goal of trauma informed approach is not to change families or young people. And it's not about following a set of practices in a particular order, but it's about changing our mindset, our responses, and maintaining a stance of curiosity to be able to hold space for the whole family. Now, you may be familiar with these, and for the purposes of today, we won't go into a deep dive into the trauma informed principles, but these are from an organization called HEARTS, which stands for Healthy Environments and Response to Trauma in Schools. The principles are interconnected and they can be woven in to everything that we do. So as we talk about taking action, we want to make sure that we're guided or grounded in these principles. And the principles are understanding trauma and stress, cultural humility and equity, safety and predictability, compassion and dependability, empowerment and collaboration, as well as resilience and social emotional wellness. And so we're not going to address these deeply, but what I am going to work with us is to really think about what this means for family engagement. And we're going to take each one of these principles and think about them as what that means for us as educators within our work and what we're committing to as we work with people within those communities. So if we're wanting to learn more about the Heart Six principles, I can share the link to this, but I know that many of you have already touched on this, and I do recommend digging into the Hearts website. So when we're taking a trauma-informed approach specifically to family engagement, it really is about becoming specific about families, what families are living with, what they're working with, and what challenges exist. And I just want to name from the National Institute of Health, we we see that that study names that 75% of parents are experiencing moderate levels of stress during the past several years. And as we work with families, we want to recognize this and build that understanding of what people are carrying as we hold relationships with them. But I also think it's illuminating because many of us are also parents, right? So when you tag in our stress with work and our stress in our daily lives, this is why it's so much more important to really attend to the relationships that, in many ways, can feed our joy, can feed our passion as we move through this, and hopefully experience less challenges because we are building those strong structures of communication, of support, of clarity that we talked about briefly. And so, and this percentage feels like, yes, yeah, given how we probably experience in our daily lives, that's probably not as accurate as we may be feeling. So, um, as we think about this, understanding the perspectives of families is a really important and wonderful shift for our own perspective in thinking about how it can lower our own stress levels and support us in developing meaningful solutions with families. So, a strategy that we like to recommend as we're thinking about shifting our perspectives to understand families is to visualize the invisible suitcase that they or that we're all carrying, right? We all carry things, stories, um, different situations that impact us. And so, as a family walks into a meeting or as you walk into a community, it could be valuable to recognize that they're carrying stuff that we cannot see. And this can be traumatic events, thoughts and feelings that are tied to an experience. So I know that for many people in my family, being at school when they were younger was not a positive or fun experience. And so when they would drop me off at school or show up to school meetings, there was just tension that was built on their previous experiences. So keeping that in mind, right, the educators that worked with me were so great to try to build comfort so that those conversations were meaningful. So I think it's important for us to recognize that, these are things that we may not have any we did not cause, but that they're coming into the door when we're working with families. But I want to name, and where we're really going to lean into, is that there's a lot of strength and resilience that our families bring into the work that we're doing with them. And it's up to us to unpack and be aware of the suitcases that people are bringing in, without judgment and trying to understand. So, as we work to grow our awareness by asking questions and building relationships with families, we know that these cases are present. And as we begin to unpack, I would love to know, as you know your community, what are families carrying? What are some of the things that they're having to manage? What is maybe something new that's changed just because of the recent years and some realities? I know that some of the families, or even in thinking about my direct family, things that have shifted a lot have been huge concerns with health that have impacted how my nieces and nephews are showing up to work, to school, how we manage the day-to-day activities of family because people are worried about their health and well-being. Um, but also, it's given a great opportunity for figuring out how to do some online learning and some creative family communication. So those are some things that have just happened that are new in the recent years. But as you reflect and as we go through the rest of our presentation, we know that our families are carrying a lot. And so keeping that in mind, and then constantly coming back to this and asking yourself, what else is this person carrying, could be really helpful in applying that trauma-informed lens. And while we cannot change what's in suitcase, there are key elements to family engagement as we're partnering with families to grow our village's capacity, where we can lean into the cultural assets, the personal skills and experience that each person can contribute. So this is where I like to center, as I mentioned, where we honor and acknowledge the resilience of the people in our community and think about how we can build on the strengths that they have. And so what comes to mind for me is that families are like our key experts in understanding the young person we may be working with. So when I was in the classroom, the parents and the families gave me a different perspective of what that young person was like outside of school so that I could tap into maybe some personal interests and get them more motivated in certain subject matter areas. And so that would be one thing that I know all of our families have, that a key expertise and understanding of our young person or the young people outside of our environment. So here I do want to hear from you on how we can leverage strengths and assets to grow our collaboration with the families that we have. So what are you thinking can be done to be able to leverage those strengths? And I think it was already named earlier in the chat, but inviting families to participate in committees where they're able to kind of bring some of their awareness of their young people, where they can advocate for their health and well-being at school, is a great way to think about leveraging the strengths and assets of the families. So when we allow the 6 trauma-informed principles to influence our school and district culture, we're making a commitment as a team that informs our work. And here is where you'll see the trauma-informed principles reframed for our family engagement practices. So as we're working with families under a trauma-informed approach, we're committing to shifting our perspectives and understanding that trauma may be present. We're committing to embracing all cultures and bringing equity to the forefront. We commit to setting up systems and opportunities built on safety and predictability for families. We commit to growing our compassion for families and our dependability. And we commit to empowering families and building opportunities for collaboration, as well as committing to the resilience and well-being of the communities and families that we are in service to. So I want you to hold these commitments lightly, but I also want you to think about what is something that you can commit to or that you are already committing to in your daily work. So feel free to put a number 1 through 6, or you can name which commitment. But ultimately, we are all acting through these. So it's helpful to bring them to the front of our minds and recognize that as we commit to these things, we are already taking steps to input that trauma-informed lens into our work with families. And so for me, it really is about growing compassion and that dependability so families know what to count on when they're connecting with me. That was a huge piece of my work when I was in the school community and in the district community, that they knew what to expect and that we followed through. And before we move forward into more resources and a little bit more information, I would love to know what opportunities you see that are coming up. So as we're going through this, maybe it's sparking some ideas of what you can do within your role. And so for the remainder of the session, please be plugging those ideas in for opportunities that you see or ideas that come up as we're talking. So if you want to continue to reflect, and I recommend this as a tool for your team, you will see the link to this particular resource in our worksheet that you'll receive after the session. But this applying the trauma-informed lens to policies and practice can be supportive of you and your team, and it supports reflection and setting goals when applying a trauma-informed lens specifically to family engagement policies and practices.